The morning of Christmas Day began with the familiar sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. It was barely 7 o'clock when I saw my son Ethan's name on the screen. For a moment, my heart filled with that warmth only a mother can feel, thinking her son was calling to wish her a Merry Christmas. How naive I was. "Good morning, Mom. Brianna asked me to send you this for dinner tonight." Not a Christmas greeting, not a "how are you," not even an affectionate tone. Just that dry, desert-like phrase, followed by an image that chilled my blood more than the winter wind hitting my window. The photograph showed a list written in my daughter-in-law's perfect calligraphy, a list that looked like a 5-star restaurant menu, but was actually an order, a demand disguised as a Christmas request. For Christmas dinner, required dishes: 15-pound minimum turkey, stuffed with walnuts and cranberries, honey mustard glazed ham, smoked salmon with dill, spinach and ricotta lasagna, Caesar salad with homemade croutons, mashed potatoes with European butter, roasted vegetables with fine herbs, freshly baked artisan bread, homemade cranberry sauce, turkey gravy, tiramisu for 12 people, red berry cheesecake, Neapolitan flan, reserve red wine, special champagne for the toast. At the end of that extensive list, a note that pierced me like a dagger. P.S. We expect everything to be ready by 7 p.m. Our entire family is coming too, my parents and my siblings, so please plan for 18 people, thank you. 18 people. As if I were a catering service hired for the occasion, as if my 70 years, my arthritis in my hands, my high blood pressure, and my tired heart meant nothing. As if being the grandmother, the mother, the matriarch of this family automatically made me their personal slave. I sat there on the edge of my bed, holding that phone as if it were a venomous snake. Tears began to blur my vision, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of a rage so profound it burned inside me. A rage accumulated over years of being taken for granted, of being treated as an inexhaustible resource instead of a human being with feelings and limitations. I looked again at that infernal list and mentally calculated the costs. A 15-pound turkey would cost at least $80. The smoked salmon, another $100. Ingredients for 3 different desserts, at least $150 more. Not counting the wine, the champagne, all the other fresh ingredients Brianna demanded so naturally. We were talking about over $600 just in ingredients, not to mention the hours of labor it would take me to prepare such a feast. I remembered the words Brianna had told me just 3 months ago when I lent her $2,000 for the down payment on their new SUV. "Oh, mother-in-law, you are so generous. We will never forget you." Lies. All lies wrapped in fake smiles and calculated hugs. How many times had I emptied my savings account to help them? How many times had I canceled my own plans to cater to their whims? Last year, I gave them $3,000 for the Cancun vacation they so desired. 6 months ago, another $100 for my grandson's birthday party at that outrageously expensive venue Brianna had chosen. And now this ruthless list arrived in my hands as if I were their household employee. The phone vibrated again. Another message from Ethan. "Mom, Brianna says if you need money to buy everything, we can help you afterwards. But please don't disappoint us today." We can help you afterwards. As if my money were an eternal loan that never needed to be repaid. As if my 70 years of life had taught me to be naive about promises that would never be kept. As if I didn't remember the dozens of previous times I had heard those same empty words, "Don't disappoint us." As if all previous Christmases had been a disappointment. As if the last 15 years preparing Christmas dinners for their family had been insufficient. As if my unconditional love was something that could be bought with empty promises of reimbursement. I got out of bed, my legs trembling not from age, but from the indignation that ran through my veins like burning lava. I walked to the kitchen, where for decades I had created family memories, where I had taught Ethan to make cookies when he was 5 years old, where I had comforted his teenage heartbreaks with hot chocolate and endless hugs. Now, that same kitchen had become a symbol of my voluntary servitude. the place where I was expected to perform culinary miracles on demand, without any consideration for my time, my money, or my dignity. The place where Brianna expected me to transform her list of demands into a real feast, as if I were her personal genie from a magic lamp. My hands trembled as I held the phone again, rereading that ruthless list. 18 people expecting a 70-year-old woman to prepare a banquet worthy of a luxury hotel. Brianna's entire family would come to enjoy the work of my arthritic hands, while she would take all the credit as the perfect daughter-in-law who organized such a beautiful Christmas celebration. I closed my eyes and let memories flood me like a nostalgic tide. I remembered that first Christmas after Ethan married Brianna 15 years ago. I was so excited to have a daughter-in-law, a daughter I never had. I had dreamed for months of that perfect Christmas dinner that would unite them as a family. I spent $300 of my savings to buy the best turkey I could find, imported and organic. I spent 3 entire days preparing every detail. The chestnut stuffing I had learned from my mother, the gratin potatoes with Gruyere cheese, the vanilla flan that was my grandmother's specialty. My hands worked tirelessly, peeling, chopping, kneading, baking. The house smelled of cinnamon and maternal love. When they arrived that night, Brianna wore a beautiful red dress that I knew had cost more than $500. She sat at the table like a queen waiting to be served while I ran from the kitchen to the dining room, making sure everything was perfect. "It's delicious, mother-in-law," she said with a smile that now seemed calculated. "You cook better than any chef." Those words filled me with pride at the time. I thought I had found my purpose, to be the matriarch who held this family together through food and unconditional love. How blind I was not to see that I was only being evaluated for my usefulness. The following year, the guest list grew. "Mother-in-law, my parents want to come too," Brianna said with that sugary voice she used when she needed something. "And my siblings with their spouses. We'll be like 20 people, but you cook so well that I'm sure you don't mind." Of course, I didn't mind. I spent $400 that time. I worked for 4 days straight until my feet swelled like balloons. Every year the expectations grew. Every year I tried harder. Christmas became a competition with myself to outdo the previous dinner. Brianna started bringing friends to show off. "Look what my mother-in-law prepares. It's incredible, isn't it? We are so lucky." I smiled proudly as I served 30 people, ignoring the pain in my back and the fatigue that consumed me. But things began to change subtly. The requests became more specific, more demanding. "Mother-in-law, this year we need you to make that lasagna that turned out so well last time. And also the salmon, but make sure it's Atlantic salmon. We don't like the Pacific kind." Suggestions turned into orders disguised as compliments. Then came the constructive criticism. "The turkey was a little dry, mother-in-law. Next time, maybe try a different recipe." "Oh, the kids didn't like the mashed potatoes so much. Maybe with more butter." Each comment was a stab wrapped in gift paper. The most painful moment came 3 years ago when I heard Brianna talking on the phone with her sister while I was doing the dishes in the kitchen. "Yes, of course we're going to mother-in-law's house for Christmas. It's free, and she makes all the food. We just have to show up and eat. It's like having a personal restaurant." She laughed with that clear laugh that used to seem melodious to me. The best part is, she pays for everything. She never asks us for a penny. Those words pierced my heart like knives. A personal restaurant. That was what I had become to her. Not a beloved mother-in-law, not a second mother, not the loving grandmother of her children, just a provider of free services who worked tirelessly for their convenience. I remembered all the times I had canceled my own Christmas plans to please them. The trip to Spain I so wanted to take with my sister Iris, canceled because "we can't have Christmas without you, mother-in-law." My friend Evelyn's invitation to spend the holidays at her country house, rejected because "the family needs you, Alice." And the expenses, my God, the expenses that had accumulated over the years. Not just Christmas dinner, but all the small favors Brianna asked of me throughout the year. "Mother-in-law, we need help with the kids' school payment." "Mother-in-law, our air conditioning broke down." "Mother-in-law, we want to change the living room furniture." Always with that smile, always with promises to return the money when their financial situation improved. I calculated mentally and realized that I had spent more than $30,000 in the last 5 years alone helping Ethan and Brianna. $30,000 from my modest pension, from the savings I had accumulated working as a secretary for 40 years. Money I could have used to travel, to fix up my house, to have a more comfortable old age. But what hurt me most wasn't the money. It was the lack of respect, the way they had turned me into something taken for granted, like the air we breathe or the water from the tap, always available, never valued, never appreciated. I looked at the phone and that list again. This time, something different happened inside me. A small but fierce flame began to ignite deep within my being. A flame that had been waiting years for the perfect moment to turn into a bonfire of dignity and self-respect. I walked to the bathroom mirror and looked at myself intently. I saw a 70-year-old woman with wrinkles that told stories of love and sacrifice, with tired eyes that still shone with intelligence. "Alice Miller," I said aloud to myself, "when was the last time someone asked you what you wanted for Christmas?" The question I asked myself in front of the mirror echoed in my mind like a painful reverberation. When was the last time someone asked me what I wanted for Christmas? The answer was devastating. Never. In 15 years of Ethan's marriage, no one had considered my wishes, my dreams, my needs for these special dates. I returned to the kitchen and opened the drawer where I kept the month's bills. I pulled out the bank statements from the last 3 months and spread them on the table like a detective analyzing evidence of a crime. The numbers didn't lie. In October, I had transferred $800 for my grandchildren's urgent school supplies. In November, $100 for Ethan's car repair. In December, $500 for the Christmas presents Brianna wanted to buy but couldn't afford. $2,500 in just 3 months, almost half of my monthly pension, which is $2,800. I was practically living on $900 a month to cover my own expenses, medication, food, utilities, clothes. Meanwhile, Brianna was buying designer handbags, and Ethan was changing cell phones every 6 months. I opened the photo album I kept in the kitchen drawer. The first images showed a different woman. Me at 55, smiling radiantly at Ethan's graduation party. I wore an emerald green dress I had bought especially for the occasion, and my hair had a modern cut that made me look elegant and sophisticated. At that time, I still indulged in monthly salon visits, bought new clothes, and took care of my appearance. I turned the pages slowly, watching my image transform over the years. In the photos from the first Christmases with Brianna, I appeared dressed up, made up, wearing carefully selected outfits. But as the years passed, my appearance became more neglected, more tired. In the latest Christmas photos, I appeared as a shadow in the background, serving food, clearing tables, always working, while everyone else smiled for the camera. In last year's photo, I stood by the oven with a stained apron and my hair tied in a messy ponytail. My hands held a heavy tray, while everyone else sat at the table toasting with glasses of wine that I had paid for. I wasn't even looking at the camera because I was too busy making sure nothing was missing from the table. That image broke my heart. When had I stopped being the guest of honor in my own home to become the household employee? When had I accepted that my place at family celebrations was behind the stove instead of at the head of the table? I vividly remembered Christmas 2 years ago, when my blood pressure soared from the stress of preparing dinner for 25 people. I was dizzy with a headache and asked Brianna if she could help me, even just with the desserts. Her response was like a slap. "Oh, mother-in-law, you know I'm not good at cooking. Besides, everyone likes yours better. Don't worry. After dinner, I'll help with the dishes." A lie. After dinner, she went straight to the sofa with a glass of wine while I spent 3 hours washing dishes. I looked in the album for photos of my own childhood Christmases. There was my mother, Eleanor, sitting at the head of our modest table with a serene smile while my siblings and I surrounded her with genuine love. She never had to cook for 30 people, never had to spend her savings on others' whims, never had to beg for respect in her own home. My mother died at 68. Exactly my age now. In her last years, we, her children, took turns visiting her, bringing her flowers, asking her what she needed. It never occurred to us to send her a list of demands via text message. The contrast was so painful that I had to close the album. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 9 in the morning. If it were any other Christmas, by now I would be at the grocery store pushing a cart full of expensive ingredients, mentally calculating how to stretch the budget to cover all of Brianna's demands. Then I would spend the rest of the day like a slave in my own kitchen, preparing a feast that others would enjoy while I served dish after dish with a forced smile. But something had changed inside me. That flame of dignity that had begun to ignite now burned stronger. I picked up the phone again and read Brianna's list for the third time. This time, instead of feeling anguish, I felt a strange and liberating clarity. I walked to my small desk and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. With my best handwriting, I began to write a different list, a list that I had been waiting years to write, but had never had the courage to put on paper. List of things Alice Miller wants for Christmas. Respect, consideration, for someone to ask me how I am, for someone to care about my feelings, for someone to value my effort, for someone to treat me as a person, not as a free service, a sincere apology for years of taking advantage of my generosity, a Christmas where I, too, can sit and enjoy instead of serving. As I wrote, tears ran down my cheeks, but they were tears of liberation, not sadness. For the first time in 15 years, I was putting my needs in writing, giving them the importance they deserved. I carefully folded my list and put it in my robe pocket. I felt as if I had written my Declaration of Independence after years of emotional servitude. The phone vibrated again. This time it was an audio message from Brianna, her sweet, manipulative voice filling my silent kitchen. "Hello, beautiful mother-in-law. I hope you've already seen the list Ethan sent you. I know it's a lot, but you're the only one who cooks deliciously enough to make the whole family happy. My parents are super excited to try your famous turkey. I've already told them you're the best cook in the world." She paused theatrically. "Oh, and please, if you can make the tiramisu without coffee because my sister doesn't like it, I'd really appreciate it. You are a darling." A darling. That word hit me like a punch to the stomach. It wasn't love Brianna felt for me. It was convenience, comfort, exploitation. True love doesn't come with lists of demands. True love asks before it requests. True love offers help instead of demanding services. I walked to my bedroom and opened the closet. In the back, wrapped in tissue paper, was the dress I had bought 3 years ago for my friend Evelyn's daughter's wedding. It was a beautiful dress, wine-colored, elegant but comfortable, that made me feel dignified and beautiful. I had worn it only once because after that purchase I felt guilty for spending money on vanities when Ethan and Brianna needed so much. I took out the dress and laid it on the bed. I took off my old robe and tried it on in front of the mirror. The fabric fell perfectly on my figure, and the color enhanced my gray eyes. I looked like the woman I had been before I became my daughter-in-law's personal maid. I looked like Alice Miller, not the mother-in-law who cooks for free. I searched in my vanity drawer and found the red lipstick I had bought with the dress. I applied it slowly, watching it transform my face. Every gesture was an act of rebellion against years of self-neglect, against the habit of putting myself at the bottom of the priority list. The phone rang. It was Ethan. This time I decided to answer. "Hello, Mom. Did you see Brianna's message? I hope you don't have a problem with the coffee-free tiramisu. You know how particular she is about food." His tone was casual, as if he were asking about the day's weather. "Ethan," I said with a firmer voice than I had used in years, "I need to ask you something. Do you know how much it costs to prepare dinner for 18 people?" There was an awkward pause. No, Mom. I haven't really calculated it, but you've always done it so well." "It's over $600 just in ingredients, son, not counting my time, my effort, my health. Do you know what my pension is?" "Mom, why are you asking me that? If you need money for the food, we already told you we'd help you afterwards." I interrupted him, just like all the previous times. "Ethan, in the last 5 years, I've spent over $30,000 helping you too. $30,000 that were for my old age, for my medications, for my peace of mind. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, his voice sounded defensive. "Mom, we never forced you to give us money. You always offered to help us." Those words were the last straw. Offer. When exactly did I offer to become your free household employee? When did I offer to empty my savings to finance your whims? When did I offer to work like a slave in my own kitchen while you sit like kings at my table? Mom, you're exaggerating. We've always thanked you. Thanked with pretty words while you continue to squeeze me dry like a lemon. Ethan, do you know what day it is today? It's Christmas, and the only thing I've received from my family is a list of demands. Not a hug, not a gift, not even a Merry Christmas. Mom, how do you feel? My son's voice became smaller. Mom, of course we wished you a Merry Christmas. We're just busy getting ready for dinner. The dinner that I'm going to prepare, that I'm going to pay for, that I'm going to serve while you enjoy. Tell me something, son. When was the last time you or Brianna cooked for me? When was the last time you invited me to dinner at your house without asking me to bring the food? The silence lengthened until it became painful. I knew Ethan was processing questions he had never asked himself, uncomfortable questions that revealed years of selfishness disguised as family tradition. Mom, I don't understand why you're so upset. You've always enjoyed cooking for the family. Enjoyed? Do you think I enjoy working for 12 hours straight for you to arrive, eat, and leave? Do you think I enjoy spending half my pension on a dinner you take for granted? Do you think I enjoy being treated as service personnel in my own home? For the first time in the conversation, I heard uncertainty in his voice. Mom, we don't treat you like service personnel. You're part of the family. Part of the family. Ethan, family members sit together at the table. Family members share expenses. Family members care about each other. I'm the employee who works for free so you can have fun. I hung up the phone with trembling hands, not from fear, but from the adrenaline that comes from speaking the truth after years of silence. For the first time in 15 years, I had set boundaries. For the first time in decades, I had defended my dignity. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and saw a different woman. The wine dress, the red lipstick, but above all, the expression of determination in my eyes. Alice Miller had awakened from her long sleep of complacency and was ready to reclaim her life. After hanging up the phone, a strange silence filled my house. It was a different silence from what I had experienced in years. It wasn't the empty silence of loneliness, but the powerful silence of a decision made. I walked to the kitchen with firm steps, feeling the wine dress move elegantly around me, reminding me of who Alice Miller truly was. I opened the pantry and looked at all the ingredients I had bought over the past week with the hope of preparing a special Christmas dinner. I had spent $200 on gourmet products, extra virgin olive oil, imported cheeses, expensive spices, cooking wine, all bought with the hope of creating a memorable evening for my family, a family that had reduced me to a text message list. I grabbed a large paper bag and began to put all those expensive ingredients into it. If Brianna wanted her 5-star restaurant dinner, she could go buy it herself. Every product I put in the bag was an act of liberation. The $80 prosciutto, the $30 macadamia nuts, the $40 authentic Parmesan cheese. Products that my modest pension should not be financing for the whim of a woman who earned twice as much as me. The phone began to ring insistently. First Ethan, then Brianna, then numbers I didn't recognize, but were surely from her family. I let it ring. For the first time in years, I controlled my own time. I decided when and with whom to speak. I went up to my room and took out the small suitcase I had used for my last trip 5 years ago. I opened it on the bed and began to carefully fold some of my best clothes. The black dress I wore to my granddaughter's graduation. The silk blouse I bought for my 65th birthday, but never wore because it was too elegant for staying at home. The comfortable but pretty shoes I had saved for a special occasion that never came. As I packed, memories flooded my mind like a fast-motion film. I remembered my mother telling me stories of her own mother-in-law, an imposing woman named Eleanor, who never allowed herself to be disrespected. "A woman who doesn't respect herself cannot expect respect from others," my mother used to tell me. How right she was. I thought of my friends from the book club, especially Evelyn, who had been widowed 3 years ago and was now traveling the world on her husband's pension. Alice, she had told me the last time we met, "You need to live for yourself. Your children are adults now. They've built their lives. Now it's your turn." At the time, I thought Evelyn was exaggerating, that it was selfish to think that way. Now I understood that she was the wisest woman I knew. I went back down to the kitchen and opened the drawer where I kept my important documents. I took out my savings passbook and reviewed it carefully. Despite all the family loans, I still had $20,000 left. Money I had been saving for a rainy day, but that I never dared to spend on myself. Money that deserved to be used for my happiness, not to finance others' vacations. I picked up my old laptop and turned it on. I hadn't used it for months because I was always busy cooking, cleaning, or solving Ethan and Brianna's financial problems. I opened my email and found the message Evelyn had sent me 2 weeks ago. "Alice, dear, you still have time to join me in Costa Rica. I found a beautiful, very affordable hotel by the sea. It would only be $500 for a week. Think about it. You need a vacation. $500. Less than what I had spent on my son's last emergency, less than what tonight's Christmas dinner would have cost me." Without thinking twice, I wrote back to Evelyn, "Dear friend, I accept your invitation. We can leave today." While I waited for her response, I brewed coffee in my French press, the one I had bought years ago but rarely used because I was always in a hurry. I poured the coffee into my favorite porcelain cup, the one I had inherited from my grandmother, and sat in my favorite armchair by the window. For the first time in months, I allowed myself the luxury of enjoying the present moment without worrying about the needs of others. The coffee tasted different when drunk without guilt. It tasted of freedom, of my own decisions, of time reclaimed. I looked out the window and saw my neighbors decorating their houses, preparing for their own Christmas celebrations. I wondered how many of them had families who truly valued them, who treated them as people and not as service providers. My laptop made the sound of a new message. Evelyn had replied, "Alice, what joy! Yes, we can leave today. There's a flight at 6 p.m. I'll pick you up at 3. Finally, you're going to have an adventure just for yourself." An adventure just for myself. Those words resonated in my heart like celestial music. When was the last time I had done something solely for my pleasure, without considering the needs or opinions of others? The answer was painful. Never. Since I got married at 20, my life had been a succession of decisions made for others. My husband, my children, my grandchildren, my daughter-in-law. I booked the flight using my own savings, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement I hadn't experienced since my youth. 8 days in Costa Rica, by the sea, sleeping in, eating whatever I wanted, reading the books I had postponed, walking on the beach unhurriedly. 8 days for Alice Miller, not for Ethan's mom or the mother-in-law who cooks well. The phone continued to ring intermittently, but I had disconnected from that toxic reality. I finished my coffee slowly, savoring each sip as if it were the first coffee of my new life, because in a way it was. I went back up to my room and added my favorite book, my sunscreen, and that bikini I had bought 2 years ago on an impulse, but never dared to wear because I'm too old for those things now, to my suitcase. At 70, I had finally decided that it is never too late to start living for oneself. As I closed the suitcase, I thought of the shock Ethan and Brianna would experience when they arrived at my house at 7 p.m. I imagined their faces finding the table empty, without the banquet they had taken for granted. I imagined their confusion reading the note I was about to write, a note that would forever change the dynamic of our relationship. I took an elegant sheet of paper from those I kept for special occasions and began to draft the most important message of my adult life. A message that would take less than 5 minutes to write, but had taken me 70 years to find the courage to express. With the pen in my trembling hand, not from nerves but from the adrenaline of freedom, I began to write the letter that would change everything. Every word I put on paper was a piece of my soul finally finding its voice after years of silence. Dear family, I wrote in my best handwriting. When you arrive tonight, expecting to find the dinner you demanded via text message, you will find only this letter. I am not your household employee. I am not your personal cook. I am not an ATM that dispenses money and favors without limit. I am Alice Miller, a 70-year-old woman who got tired of begging for respect in her own home. I paused to wipe the tears falling on the paper. They weren't tears of sadness, but of a relief so profound it felt physical. I continued writing. For 15 years, I have emptied my bank account, my energy, and my dignity to please you. I have spent over $30,000 of my savings on your emergencies, whims, and demands. I have worked like a slave in my own kitchen while you behaved like hotel guests who don't pay the bill. The phone rang again. This time I could see it was Brianna. Her contact photo showed that perfect smile I had learned to decipher as pure manipulation. I let it ring as I continued writing my Declaration of Independence. Today, I received a list of 18 dishes that I was supposed to prepare as if it were a restaurant menu, a list that would cost me over $600 and 12 hours of exhausting physical work. A list sent without asking me if I could, if I wanted to, or if I had other plans for my Christmas. Because it turns out I also have the right to have my own plans. I remembered the exact words of Brianna's list and felt that sting of indignation again. The casual way she had assumed I would be available, the way she had added her entire family without consulting me, the cold postscript demanding everything be ready by 7, as if I were a machine programmed to satisfy her wishes. When my husband passed away 10 years ago, I continued writing, I promised I would dedicate the rest of my life to taking care of my family. But caring doesn't mean being abused. Loving doesn't mean allowing myself to be disrespected. Being a mother and grandmother doesn't mean giving up my own identity and well-being. Just then, I heard the doorbell. I looked out the window and saw Evelyn's car parked outside. My heart quickened with an emotion I hadn't felt in decades. It was the thrill of adventure, of the unknown, of choosing my own path for the first time in years. "Just a moment, Evelyn," I called towards the door. "I'm almost done." I returned to my letter with renewed urgency. Therefore, when you read this note, I will be on a plane heading to Costa Rica. I'm going to spend Christmas on a beach, reading books I've postponed, sleeping in, and remembering who I am when I'm not serving others. I'm going to spend my savings on my happiness for the first time in decades. The doorbell rang again. Evelyn was punctual as always, but I needed to finish this letter. I needed to close this chapter of my life before opening the next. On the table, you will find bread and water. That is all I am willing to offer to people who have treated me as service personnel for 15 years. If you are hungry, restaurants are open. If you need money to pay for dinner, work for it as I did my whole life. If you need someone to cook for you, hire a caterer. I signed the letter with my full name, Alice Miller, not your employee, not your ATM, but a woman who has reclaimed her dignity. I placed the letter in the center of my dining table, next to a loaf of whole wheat bread and a pitcher of water. The image was deliberately austere, a brutal contrast to the expectations they had nourished for years. Instead of the restaurant banquet they expected to find, they would see the naked reality of their selfishness. I brought my suitcase downstairs and opened the door for Evelyn. My friend hugged me with a radiant smile. "Alice, you look beautiful. That dress looks divine on you." It was the first time in months someone had complimented me without asking for a favor in return. "Evelyn, you don't know what this trip means to me," I said as I loaded my suitcase into her car. "I feel like I'm escaping a prison I built myself." "Honey," she replied as she started the engine, "sometimes we need to step away to clearly see how close we were to losing ourselves. Costa Rica is going to give you your soul back." As we drove away from my house, I looked in the rearview mirror. It was the same house where I had raised Ethan, where I had built family memories, where I had grown old caring for others. But it was also the house where I had lost my identity, where I had allowed myself to be turned into a shadow of who I truly was. In a few hours, Ethan and Brianna would arrive with their 18 hungry guests. They would find my empty table, my devastating letter, and the absence of the woman they had taken for granted for too long. Imagining their faces filled me with a satisfaction I never thought I would feel. "You know what's most liberating about all this?" I asked Evelyn as she drove toward the airport. "For the first time in years, someone else is going to have to solve their own problems. For the first time in years, I'm not going to be there to clean up their messes, to finance their whims, to sacrifice my well-being for theirs." Evelyn smiled. "And the most beautiful part is that you're just beginning to discover who you are when no one needs you for anything. You're going to meet the Alice who exists beyond being useful to others." Her words moved me to tears. The Alice who exists beyond being useful to others. A woman who for 70 years had defined her worth by what she could do for others. Finally, I was going to explore who I was when no one asked anything of me. The airport looked beautiful from a distance, full of Christmas lights and promises of new horizons. For the first time in decades, I too had a right to those promises. The airport was full of families reuniting for Christmas, hugging with tears of joy, carrying gifts wrapped in shiny paper. As I walked towards the boarding gate with my small suitcase, I felt like a stranger observing a world from which I had been absent for years. A world where people valued each other, where family gatherings were a reason for genuine celebration, not disguised exploitation. Evelyn and I sat in the waiting area, and for the first time in years, I could observe families without the knot in my stomach that came from thinking about my own dysfunctional family dynamic. I saw an elderly grandmother being lovingly helped by her grandchildren, who carried her bags and made sure she was comfortable. I saw a young mother receiving flowers from her teenage son, who hugged her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "Look at that," I pointed to Evelyn, observing a family where everyone contributed to carrying the luggage. When was the last time Ethan helped me with something without me asking him? When was the last time he asked me if I needed anything? If I was tired? If I wanted to rest? Evelyn followed my gaze and nodded understandingly. "Alice, you raised a man who learned that women exist to serve him, and Brianna found in you the perfect mother-in-law to continue that pattern. They won't change until you change the rules of the game." Her words hit me with the force of truth. I had been an accomplice to my own exploitation. I had taught my son that maternal love was measured in favors granted and money lent. I had allowed Brianna to see me as an unlimited resource instead of a person with my own needs. My phone began to vibrate insistently. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Ethan and Brianna were surely preparing to leave for my house, excited about the banquet they expected to find. I looked at the screen and saw 17 missed calls and 32 unread messages. The desperation had begun. I opened the most recent messages. Ethan: "Mom, please answer. We're worried." Brianna: "Mother-in-law, is everything okay? Do you need help with dinner?" And then, as minutes passed without a response, the tone changed. Ethan: "Mom, we don't understand why you're not answering." Brianna: "Mother-in-law, we're on our way. We hope everything is ready." Evelyn noticed my expression and gently touched my arm. "Do you want to tell me what they're saying?" "They're starting to realize something isn't normal," I replied, feeling a mixture of nervousness and satisfaction. For the first time in 15 years, I'm not available when they need me. For the first time in decades, they're going to have to face the consequences of taking someone for granted. The announcement of our flight resonated through the airport speakers. "Flight 447 to San Jose, Costa Rica, boarding at gate number 12. My heart quickened. It wasn't just a flight. It was my escape to a version of myself that had been dormant for too long. As we walked toward the boarding gate, I remembered the last time I had flown. It was 5 years ago, when I went to visit my sister Iris in Miami. It had only lasted 3 days because Ethan called me saying Brianna had an emergency and needed me to return urgently to take care of the kids. It turned out the emergency was that she wanted to go shopping with her friends and had no one to leave the little ones with. I cut my vacation short, spent $200 changing my plane ticket, and rushed back to take care of my grandchildren while Brianna bought a $1,000 handbag. That night, while the children slept, I found the handbag receipt in her purse. $1,000, more than half of my monthly pension, spent on a whim while I canceled my only vacation in years. Never again, I promised myself as I boarded the plane. Never again will I allow my needs to be less important than the desires of others. Never again will I be the first to sacrifice and the last to be considered. The plane was small but comfortable. Evelyn had insisted on paying for my first-class upgrade. "It's your Christmas gift," she said with a smile. "Your gift from a friend who truly loves you, unconditionally, without lists of demands." As the plane took off, I looked out the window at the city lights receding. Somewhere down below, Ethan and Brianna would be arriving at my house, opening the door with the key I had given them for emergencies, and finding my table empty. Imagining that moment filled me with a satisfaction I never thought I would feel. The phone vibrated one last time before I put it on airplane mode. It was an audio message from Brianna, and this time her voice didn't sound sweet and manipulative. It sounded desperate and annoyed. "Mother-in-law, I don't know what's happening, but my whole family is already on their way. My mom brought flowers, my siblings bought expensive wine. Everyone is excited about the dinner you were going to prepare. Please tell me you're not going to disappoint us. Please answer the phone. Please tell me you're not going to disappoint us." Those words echoed in my mind like a revelation. For 15 years, the only person who had been constantly disappointed was me. Disappointed by the lack of consideration, by the absence of genuine gratitude, by being treated as an object instead of a person. I put the phone on airplane mode and closed my eyes. In 2 hours, I would be in Costa Rica, waking up to a life where my decisions belonged only to me, a life where no one would send me lists of demands via text message, a life where Alice Miller's worth would not be measured by her usefulness to others. The flight attendant offered me champagne. "Are you celebrating something special?" she asked with a kind smile. "Yes," I replied, accepting the glass with hands that no longer trembled. "I'm celebrating my independence. I'm celebrating that, at 70, I finally learned to put myself first." I toasted myself as the plane soared into the clouds. Below in my empty house, a letter awaited to be read by a family that was about to learn a lesson it had taken me 70 years to teach, that true love is not demonstrated with lists of demands, but with respect, consideration, and reciprocity. For the first time in decades, Alice Miller's Christmas was going to be exactly as she wanted it to be. 3 days later, as I sipped my morning coffee on the hotel terrace overlooking the sea in Costa Rica, my phone began to ring with an intensity I hadn't experienced in years. It had been 3 days of absolute digital silence. 3 days where Alice Miller had existed solely for herself, without responding to any external demands, without worrying about anyone else's needs. The Costa Rican sunrise painted the sky with colors I had forgotten existed. Golden oranges, soft pinks, creamy yellows reflected in the calm waves. For the first time in decades, I had slept until my body wanted to wake up, without alarms, without the urgency of preparing breakfast for others, without the anxiety of checking messages that might contain new demands. Evelyn approached with her own cup of coffee, wearing a straw hat she had bought at the local market. "Good morning, Rebel," she said with a mischievous smile. "Are you ready to face the reality of the world you left behind?" The phone continued to insist. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, Costa Rica time, which meant it was 9 o'clock back home. Ethan had surely been texting all night, trying to process what he had found on my table 3 days ago. "I think it's time to read the messages," I told Evelyn, feeling a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. 3 days should be enough time for them to understand that something changed forever. I opened the messaging app and found an avalanche of communications that told the whole story of that disastrous Christmas night. The first messages, sent around 7 p.m. on December 24th, were of confusion. "Mom, we arrived and no one's here. Where are you? The house is dark. Are you feeling okay?" Then came the panic messages when they found my letter. Ethan had sent photos of the paper as if he needed evidence that it had really happened. The image showed my dining room table with the bread, water, and my neatly folded letter in the center, surrounded by the fine tableware they expected to see filled with delicacies. "Mom, this can't be serious. Brianna's whole family is here. The kids are hungry. Please tell me where you are." The desperate tone of his messages revealed something I had never considered. For the first time in 15 years, Ethan had had to face the consequences of his expectations without his mother there to solve the problem. Brianna had also texted, and her emotional evolution through the messages was fascinating to observe. She started with her usual tone of fake concern. "Mother-in-law, we hope you're well. We're worried about not finding you." But as hours passed without a response, her true personality emerged. "This is very irresponsible. My whole family came expecting the dinner you promised." Promised? That word particularly caught my attention. I had never promised anything. They had sent a list of demands and had automatically assumed I would fulfill it. The difference was vast, but it perfectly revealed how they had seen me all these years, as a hired service that couldn't refuse to follow orders. I kept reading. The messages from the night of the 24th showed a progression of emotions ranging from confusion to anger. "Brianna's parents spent money on flowers and wine to accompany your dinner. The kids are crying because we said Grandma had prepared something special. We had to order pizza for 18 people. We spent $200 on food we didn't want." $200 on pizza, less than half of what it would have cost me to prepare their demanded banquet, and they considered it a financial tragedy. The irony was so perfect I couldn't help but smile. Evelyn, who had been reading over my shoulder, burst out laughing. "Seriously? They're fussing about spending $200 after all the thousands you've spent on them?" The lack of self-awareness is astounding. The messages from December 25th showed a change in strategy. They had moved from confusion and anger to emotional manipulation. "Mom, the grandkids miss you. They're asking why Grandma didn't come to Christmas. Catherine is asking if she did something wrong to make you leave. The whole family is worried. You've never done anything like this." Catherine, my 12-year-old granddaughter, the only person in that entire family who treated me as a human being instead of a service. She was the only one who asked me how I felt, the only one who hugged me without asking for anything in return, the only one who seemed to genuinely enjoy my company beyond what I could cook for her. For the first time since I had made this decision, I felt a pang of guilt, but I immediately remembered something crucial. Catherine was also the only person who would benefit from seeing me respect myself. She needed an example of a woman who set boundaries, who valued her own dignity, who didn't allow herself to be treated like an emotional doormat. The messages from the 26th revealed they had begun to investigate my whereabouts. "Mom, I called all the hospitals. No one knows anything about you. We went to Aunt Iris's house. She says she doesn't know where you are but supports you in any decision you've made." Iris, my older sister, had always been more direct than me. She had surely told them some uncomfortable truths they needed to hear. Finally, I reached the most recent messages, sent that same morning. The tone had changed completely. There was no longer anger or manipulation. There was something I had never seen before in my son's messages: humility. "Mom, I've been thinking about everything you wrote in your letter. Brianna and I have been talking. Maybe we haven't realized how much we've depended on you. Maybe we haven't been fair to you." It was the first message in 15 years where Ethan acknowledged there was a problem in our relationship, but the message that impacted me most was the last one, sent just an hour before. "Mom, I don't know where you are, but I hope you're okay. I hope you're doing something that makes you happy. For the first time in my adult life, I realize I've never asked you what you want. When you come back, if you want to come back, I'd like to start over. I'd like to get to know my mom, not just the woman who solves our problems." I closed the phone and looked out at the ocean. The waves continued their eternal rhythm, oblivious to human dramas, reminding me that life went on regardless of our family conflicts. A seagull landed near my table, pecking at breakfast crumbs without asking permission, simply taking what it needed. You know what's most beautiful about all this? I told Evelyn. For the first time in 15 years, my son is seeing me as a person separate from him. For the first time, he's questioning how he treats me. And most importantly, for the first time, I'm not there to give him the easy answers. A week after my return from Costa Rica, I was sitting in my backyard drinking chamomile tea when I heard the doorbell. It was Sunday afternoon, and for the first time in years, I had no plans that involved cooking for others or solving other people's problems. I had spent the morning reading a novel I had bought at the San Jose airport, a story about a woman rediscovering her identity after decades of living for others. Through the peephole, I saw Ethan standing at my door, but he wasn't accompanied by Brianna or the children. He carried flowers in one hand and what appeared to be a box of chocolates in the other. For the first time in years, my son had come to visit me without bringing a list of problems to solve or favors to ask. I opened the door slowly. Ethan looked different. There was something in his posture, in his expression, that I hadn't seen before. He seemed smaller, more humble, like a child who had been punished and finally understood why. "Hello, Mom," he said softly. "May I come in? I'd like to talk to you." I invited him to sit in the living room, the same living room where for years I had received his visits that invariably ended with requests for money or favors. This time, however, he sat on the edge of the sofa, nervous, as if it were the first time he was visiting a stranger's house. "Mom," he began, fidgeting with the flowers he had brought. "The whole week you were away, I was thinking about your letter, about everything you wrote, and I realized something terrible. I don't remember the last time I asked you how you were if you needed anything from me." His words surprised me with their honesty. In 30 years of being his mother, that was the first time Ethan openly acknowledged that there was something fundamentally unbalanced in our relationship. "Tell me about your trip," he continued. "I want to know what you did, how you felt, what you thought. I want to get to know my mom as a person, not just as the woman who's always available when I need her." I told him about Costa Rica, about the sunrises I had contemplated unhurriedly, about the books I had read on the beach, about the conversations I had had with Evelyn and other travelers we met. I told him about the liberation I had felt making decisions based solely on my own desires, about the peace of not having to worry about anyone else's needs. "Mom," he interrupted at one point, "were you happy before? Were you happy cooking for us, lending us money, solving our problems?" The question hit me with unexpected force. No one had asked me about my happiness in decades. "No, son," I replied with an honesty that surprised me. I wasn't happy. I felt useful, I felt needed, but I wasn't happy. I had become a version of myself that existed solely for others. Ethan nodded slowly. "Brianna and I have been going to couples therapy since you got back. The therapist has helped us understand how we've treated you. She told us something we had never considered, that a relationship where only one person gives and the other receives is not love. It's exploitation." Those words moved me to tears. For the first time in years, someone in my family had used the correct word to describe what I had been living. Exploitation. It wasn't love poorly expressed. It wasn't a close-knit family. It wasn't tradition. It was pure and simple exploitation. "Mom, I want to apologize," Ethan continued, and for the first time in the conversation, his eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry for treating you like our personal bank. I'm sorry for assuming you would always be available to solve our problems. I'm sorry for not valuing your time, your money, your energy. I'm sorry for teaching my kids that this is how grandmothers are treated." His apologies sounded genuine, but I had learned to be cautious with pretty words. "Ethan, I appreciate your apologies, but I need you to understand that things are going to be different from now on. I'm not going back to being the same woman who emptied her bank account every time you had a whim." "We understand," he responded quickly. "In fact, Brianna and I have been calculating all the money you've lent us in the last 5 years. It's $32,000, Mom. $32,000 that we never returned because we assumed it was your obligation to help us." The precision of the figure impressed me. It meant they had really gone through the exercise of remembering every loan, every financial favor, every time they had dipped into my purse. "We've talked to a financial advisor," he continued. "We're going to sell the SUV we bought with your money, and we're going to give you half right now. We'll pay you the rest in monthly installments of $500 over the next 2 years. It's non-negotiable, Mom. It's what we owe you." He took an envelope from his jacket and handed it to me. Inside were $16,000 in cash. "It's half of our debt to you," he said. "The other half you'll receive promptly, every month. I promise you." For the first time in years, I felt my son was treating me as a human being worthy of respect and consideration. But I also knew that words were easy and that true changes were demonstrated by sustained actions over time. "Is there anything else?" Ethan asked, taking out his phone. "Catherine wants to talk to you. She's been very worried but also very proud of you. She says she finally understood what it means to be a strong woman." My granddaughter appeared on the phone screen with a radiant smile. "Grandma, Dad told me you went on a trip alone to Costa Rica. That's amazing. When I grow up, I want to be brave like you too." Her words filled me with deep satisfaction. Catherine had understood the most important lesson, that a woman has the right to set boundaries, to value herself, to demand respect. My decision had not only saved my own dignity, but had taught my granddaughter that she didn't have to accept less than she deserved. "I love you, Grandma," Catherine continued. "And Dad told me we're going to start visiting you just to be with you without asking for anything. Is it okay if I come next Saturday and we make cookies together? I'll bring the ingredients." After hanging up, Ethan and I sat in silence for a few minutes. There was so much to process, so much to repair, so much to build from scratch. But for the first time in years, I felt hope. Not the blind hope that things would go back to how they were, but the solid hope that they could be better. "Mom," Ethan said before leaving, "I know it's going to take time for you to trust that this change is real. I know we've promised things before and haven't kept them, but I want you to know that your letter changed my life. It made me realize that I had lost my mom somewhere along the way and replaced her with a free household employee." After he left, I remained sitting in my garden until it grew dark. In my hands, I held $16,000, more money than I had seen together in years. But more important than the money was the feeling that finally, at 70, I had learned the most important lesson of my life, that teaching others how to treat us is the most important responsibility we have towards ourselves. That night, as I prepared my favorite dinner just for myself, I reflected on the journey that had begun with a cruel list of Christmas demands. It had ended with something far more valuable, the respect of my family, and more importantly, my own self-respect. I looked toward the future, and for the first time in decades, I saw possibilities that belonged only to me. Trips I wanted to take, books I wanted to read, friendships I wanted to cultivate, dreams I had postponed for too long. Alice Miller had spent 70 years learning to be useful to others. The years she had left, she would dedicate to being happy for herself. And that, I decided, as I toasted myself with a glass of wine, was the best investment I had made in my entire life. It's not revenge, it's liberation, and it's never too late to start living for oneself. 6 months have passed since that Christmas that changed my life forever. As I write these lines, I'm sitting in my new oceanfront apartment in San Diego, a place I bought with part of the money Ethan returned to me, and with my own savings that I finally allowed myself to use for my happiness. Every morning I wake up without an alarm, without the anxiety of checking messages that might contain new demands, without the pressure of being useful to someone else before being good to myself. The sound of the waves has replaced the insistent ringing of my phone, and the aroma of the coffee I make just for myself has replaced the stress of cooking banquets for people who took my effort for granted. I won't lie and say the change was easy. During the first few weeks after that Christmas, there were moments when I doubted my decision. 70 years of living for others don't erase overnight. There were moments when my maternal instinct screamed that I should go back, apologize, and be the Alice I always was. But every time I felt that temptation, I remembered the humiliation of that text message list. I remembered the $32,000 I had given away without question. I remembered the tears of frustration I shed in silence for years. The relationship with Ethan and Brianna has improved, but on completely new foundations. Ethan kept his word. Every month, he religiously deposits $500 into my account, and each transfer is accompanied by a message that simply says, "With love and respect, Mom." They have never missed a payment and have never tried to negotiate a reduction or postponement. Brianna, for her part, surprised me 3 months ago. She showed up at my door with a handwritten letter, something I never thought she would do. In that letter, she asked for forgiveness for having seen me as a resource instead of a person. She told me the therapist had asked them how they would feel if their own children treated them the way they had treated me. That question, she wrote, kept me awake for weeks. "Mother-in-law," the letter said, "I want you to know that I've been teaching my children to save part of their allowance to buy you birthday and Christmas presents. I want them to learn that love is shown with consideration and reciprocity, not with demands. I want them to grow up knowing that grandmothers are to be loved and respected, not exploited." The letter moved me to tears, not only because it represented a genuine change in Brianna, but because it meant that my grandchildren were learning a lesson that could protect them from perpetuating toxic patterns in their own future relationships. Catherine has been my greatest joy throughout this process. Every Saturday afternoon, we have a video call where she tells me about her studies, her dreams, her worries. For the first time in my life as a grandmother, these conversations don't involve requests for money, favors, or problem solving. They are real conversations between two women who respect each other. A month ago, she told me something I will never forget. "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be independent like you. I want people to love me for who I am, not for what I can do for them." Last Christmas was very different. Instead of cooking for 18 people, Evelyn and I organized an intimate dinner for 8 widowed friends like us. Each one brought a dish. Each one contributed something. Each one was valued for her company, not for her usefulness. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. We toasted our newfound freedoms. And for the first time in decades, I too was a guest instead of the slave hostess. Ethan and his family invited me to spend Christmas Eve with them, but I set my own conditions. I would arrive after dinner, stay for only 2 hours, and do no housework. They accepted without protest. When I arrived, I found the table set with food they had prepared themselves. Nothing elaborate, but made with their own effort. Brianna had cooked, Ethan had set the table, and the children had made simple desserts with their own hands. It was beautiful to see my family functioning without depending on me for every detail. It was beautiful to be treated as a special guest instead of as service personnel. And it was even more beautiful to go home at 10 o'clock at night, knowing that my worth in that celebration had not depended on my ability to solve other people's problems. Economically, my life has been completely transformed. Without the constant expenses for family emergencies, without the costly dinners I financed monthly, without the loans that were never repaid, I have been able to create a real emergency fund for my old age. The money Ethan is returning to me, I have invested in a retirement plan that will give me financial security for the rest of my life. But the deepest change has not been economic. It has been emotional. I have rediscovered parts of my personality that I had buried for decades. I have started reading voraciously again. I have taken painting classes. I have learned to use travel apps to plan my own adventures. Next month, I will travel alone to Spain, the trip I had postponed so many times due to family emergencies that were never true emergencies. I have learned that the guilt I felt when prioritizing my own desires was not real guilt, but social conditioning that had taught me that women, especially mothers and grandmothers, exist solely to serve others. Unlearning that conditioning has been the most difficult and most liberating work of my life. Now I understand that what I did that Christmas was not cruel. It was necessary. It was not selfish. It was self-preservation. It was not a tantrum. It was a personal revolution that arrived 70 years late, but arrived in time to save the years I have left. To the women who read me and recognize themselves in my story, I want to tell you something. It is never too late to set boundaries. It is never too late to demand respect. It is never too late to rediscover who you are beyond your usefulness to others. The fear of disappointing others should not be stronger than the commitment not to disappoint yourself. Today, as the sun sets over the Mexican Pacific, I toast the woman I was and the woman I am now. I toast every tear that led me to this clarity, every dollar I recovered, every boundary I set. I toast the women who dare to say no more when life reduces them to free service personnel. My name is Alice Miller. I am 70 years old, and finally, after a lifetime, I am living for myself. That is my victory. That is my freedom. And that is the most valuable inheritance I can leave my granddaughter. The certainty that a woman always has the right to demand respect, no matter her age, no matter how long she has allowed the opposite. Life is too precious to live on your knees. I stood up at 70. You can stand up at any age. If you enjoyed my story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can write more stories like this. Thanks a lot in advance. What about you? What would you do in this person's shoes? I'd really love to hear your thoughts, so drop them in the comments. I'm always curious to know what you think. Oh, and let me know where you've heard this story. If you want to hear more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many more waiting for you. Big hugs, and see you next time.